Hello, everybody. I always get very impressed by that when I see that. When you really think about it, we have always been in a project economy kind of thing because there's been so many things in the past that we have run from a project perspective, and it just really is a different mindset on how you actually look at it. So welcome to the afternoon sessions. I'm very impressed how everybody clicked right into it. We didn't seem to have any issues. That was really pretty terrific. Everybody seems to be getting used to the chat sessions and how to actually use these things. And we have some really interesting conversations this afternoon, starting with the panelists here that we're going to have the panel discussion. This is going to be moderated by Andrew from this morning. I will be bringing him in here in just a moment. Just a couple of housekeeping issues, make sure that everybody is aware of what's happening. Once again, hats off to our sponsors, the gold sponsors, Gravity IT and the Spear Group. You can see those in the upper right-hand and left-hand corners. Click on their links. I understand the Spear Group had a problem with one of the links in the other session, but this one it is corrected. Again, there are tables that are specific to them there. You can see their names under it. We do have representatives from both groups there. If you have an opportunity available, or if you are looking for an opportunity, they're very, very professional in what it is that they're putting together. And of course, Centric, hats off to them. You'll see them on the left-hand side. They are there as well. Also, I don't know if you know this, but the volunteer and the membership links are on the right-hand side. So please take a look at those if you have an opportunity. So let's go ahead. We're going to kick off the actual panel discussion. This is a really boring page or slide. It's what I actually, you can tell that I did it. But the panel discussion this morning is, or this afternoon is really interesting. It's a different way of taking a look at the pandemic and what has happened to us. And really kind of looking from a positive bent. As project managers, whatever the situation is, we have to think logically and effectively and efficiently about next steps, right? We have to take emotions out of this and really figure out how do we navigate, what do we do next to get our projects going, to get our businesses going. And more, we've become part of the business in and of itself. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and have Andrew, if you want to come on up and introduce our panelists and take it away.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ed. And man, what a hype video that was for project managers. It makes me want to open up a Gantt chart right away. That was fantastic. Just to kind of get us warmed up coming back from the lunch break. As you're watching that video, if you did see it, go ahead and share one of your favorite projects that you saw within that. Go ahead and share that in the chat because we'll be able to take advantage of that throughout the day as well through that same engagement. So from that 50 top projects, share in the chat which one kind of stood out to you or that you remember or that you really enjoy. For me, it was the Panama Canal expansion because my wife and I just recently moved to Panama. My wife works for the United Nations and got a new assignment based here in Panama City, the Latin American Caribbean hub for the UN. So I am literally 5 miles from that project extension. So love it. We see the Human Genome, the space station, Ground Zero, Fashion Week, Watson, right? A lot of really interesting things. And I love that perspective of, yeah, they're all projects in a sense, something that we are, kind of expertly attuned to being able to help with. And part of that is, in the past, projects are partially about creating new change, right? A new project means inevitably something is going to change. So sometimes we're the creators of those change, and sometimes we are the recipient of the change, as Ed mentioned, certainly with the pandemic and how people are adapting. And so for this particular panel, we're going to be focused on how people are adapting to the situation, what's going on. And we've got a fantastic lineup of people who are going to be joining us. I'm going to give a quick kind of title read of each one of those, and then I'll bring them on one by one with a more kind of full-on bio. But your 4 panelists for this evening, we've got Rebecca Pai, who is the Chief of Staff Technology at American Express. We've got Natsia Statkovich, who is a Senior Project Manager at City National Bank of Florida. We've got Pablo Civalero, who is a Senior Director of IT at Blue Green Vacations, and Brian Hogan, who is the IT Vice President of Business Relationship Management at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. So you already know that the lineup is stacked and going to be great. So to give a little bit more context of who those people are, and then as I say them, they're going to join me on screen. But first up is Brian Hogan, the IT Vice President of Business Relationship Management at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, with more than 30 years of experience in the wine and spirits industry, so he knows a thing or two. Brian has a dynamic background, having spent time working in both the supplier and distribution tiers. And throughout the years, Brian has held positions in operations, finance, supply chain, and HR. So please, with some exclamation points in the chat, we're going to use that as our applause today. Please welcome to your screen, Brian Hogan.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? Hope everyone's good there in South Florida. I'm in Texas today. This is where I'm from. So we're getting a little bit of different geographies, aren't we, Andrew?
We are,
yeah.
Absolutely. Panama, Texas, and of course, South Florida representing. Well, Brian, it's great to have you on the
really
panel.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Up next, we've got Natsaya Stochkovich. She is a decisive, action-oriented, and results-focused senior project manager with success in organization-wide and multi-department initiatives. She has 8+ years of experience in project management, waterfall, and agile methodologies. Natsaya's career expands over several industries, including banking, education, and the government sector. With a background in education, Natsaya gained her master's degree and started her career at Grando State University in Belarus, and she moved to the U.S. seeking freedom, professional growth, and career opportunities. Please join me with some exclamation points welcoming Natsaya. If she's able to hit the camera on button, there she is.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Excellent.
Nice today.
Yes, you're looking good. I love the deep blue kind of background that you've got there. Way cooler than my white background. Almost looks like you're coming in from maybe underwater, like you're there next to SpongeBob SquarePants or something like that. I love the deep blue that is back there.
That is the background of one of the offices. I'm in the office today at work, so this is like one of our 4 feature colors. So yes, deep blue. That's the color of the day.
Excellent. I like it. Up next is Pablo Civalero, who is an award-winning technology executive with over 20 years of experience specializing in professional services, software development, operations management, and project management across multiple industries. Pablo has extensive experience in all aspects of IT operations, including software development, DevOps, infrastructure, and service desk. Pablo has been working at Blue Green Vacations for the past 4 years as a senior director of business solutions and is responsible for the enterprise applications that drive the Blue Green business, supporting $75 million in revenue and 65 resorts throughout the country. Welcome to your screen. Exclamation points for Pablo.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
I had to read that. I'm a little embarrassed now because they asked for a bio. I was like, yeah, here's a resume.
Yeah, no, I like it. I'm as an engineer, I love numbers, so I love that you included numbers within that. I'm like, oh yes, that I know about. Excellent. And finally, our final panelist joining us today is Rebecca Pai. She is the Chief of Staff for the Office of SVP and UCIO at American Express. Rebecca offers in-depth experience in developing and implementing strategies that integrate brand, customer experience, and value proposition. She's highly adept at driving strategy, product roadmap, delivering products and services. Rebecca is a powerful force in the workplace and uses her positive attitude and tireless energy to bring others along with her. So welcome to your screen. Final set of exclamation points to Rebecca. Yes, and I love that we're getting some smiley faces in the chat as well. Hello, Rebecca.
Awesome. Hello. Hi, Andrew. Hello, everyone. It's awesome being here today. Thank you to PMI and to the sponsors for putting this program together. I am honored to be here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Shout out to all of you taking some time away, and of course to the sponsors and organizers for making all of this possible. So thank you for that. Before we jump into the more in-depth questions, I want to just warm up a little bit and help the audience get to know you a little bit better. So we'll go through kind of a quick rapid fire round of very simple questions. So the first question, some of you have already started to answer, but just give us kind of that quick answer of where geographically are you joining us from today? I am joining from Panama City, Panama. Up next, we've got Brian. You said you were where in Texas are you?
Yeah, Frisco, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas.
All right, excellent. And Natsia?
I am in Miami downtown.
Okay, downtown Miami. I like it. Pablo?
I'm joining you from Parkland, and today my air conditioner went out, so it's really warm in my house.
Woo-hoo.
Oh,
Wow.
yikes.
I'm impressed you are still wearing a jacket.
You'll see some beads of sweat coming.
I like it. And Rebecca?
Fort Lauderdale, Florida, not too far from Parkland, but I still have my power.
You still got the AC. I like it. Excellent. And just out of curiosity, a similar question of where you're coming in from, but let's say the actual room that you're currently in, whether in the office or at home in a home office. I am in my home office here in Panama. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, converted my media room actually to my new work from home space for the last 8 months. So
I like it. So you took a room that you were used to just mostly relaxing in and turned it into a room where you're now mostly working in.
The most stressful place in the world. Correct,
Yeah.
Andrew. That's right.
I like it. What about you, Natsia?
I'm in the office today. So this is my week to be in the office. We have already started kind of going back to the office and staggered schedule. So this is my week. This is my last day, and then I go back to my home office.
I like it. And are the plants taken care of and everything? That was my kind of like thought. I've been working home for a while, but I know my wife's concern with her office was like, what happened to the plants?
Well, I did a smart thing. I took my only plant that I had on my desk with me. I had a feeling that when they told us, yeah, just for a week or two, I had a feeling, no, I'm not going to let this little guy die. So I took it with me. I cannot say it's more safe at my home, actually, but I tried.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was at least some forward thinking. That's some impressive foresight. I like that. And what about you, Pablo?
Yeah, so everybody from Blue Green is also working from home. So I'm in my home office today. Used to be the kids' playroom, so now it's the home office.
I like it. Do they still come in there and play?
Not today, they won't.
So we're not going to have any of that like BBC type interview where the person just kind of opens up.
No,
Christy says
against the window, so there's nothing that can come in view.
That is smart. If someone creeps over your shoulder and like knocks down the window, we will let you know.
Yes.
I like it. Other people are sharing in the chat that their playroom has also now become an office as well. And what about you, Becca?
Yes, same here. We're all working from home from American Express, and like Pablo, converted the playroom into the work office. I've warned my kids already not to run in here. So if you guys do hear anything or, a little body creep up on me, do let me know because I'll go.
Knock them away. I
got 2 dogs in here with me also, Andrew. So if they pipe up, it's par for the course.
Yeah, we always may have some questions. It depends on their project management skills. They might be a little rough. That's a terrible dog pun. But I love it. And Becca, those pictures behind you, I'm assuming that's your family up on the wall and not just random strangers?
Yeah, no, my family. My kids, my husband. The center one is our wedding photo.
Oh, nice.
That is amazing. That is a nice look. Is that a like actual photograph or is it a painting?
No, it's an actual photograph. I know it looks like a painting, doesn't it?
It does. That's epic colors into a photo.
Yeah.
I like it. Excellent. Well, thank you all for kind of sharing a little bit about that. We get to know you as a human. That's part of this piece of virtual, is that in some ways, there's an opportunity for more vulnerability and authenticity because we are sometimes coming into people's homes or more directly into their offices as opposed to all showing up into a hotel room. And Ed and I were chatting a little bit earlier. One of the other nice things about a virtual environment is for the opportunity for people to share their thoughts in the chat, where typically you're kind of just sitting there thinking some of these things to yourself as you wait for the panelists to say something or whatever. You can share those thoughts. You can react. You can say, oh, this really stands out to me, or even probe for or ask for a little bit more. So we will be kind of checking in on the chat throughout the panel to see people's thoughts, and also be coming to you for some potential questions coming up. But we've got a handful of great questions already prepared for the panelists. So we're going to jump into those. So we're going to start with the first question, which is, 2020 started like any other year for the most part. And then in March, we had a major shift. And even since then, it's shifted, continued to slightly shift even more since June. So our first question to the panelists is, how do your organizations envision the workforce and the economy for the remaining 2020, the last 2 months, essentially? And what shifts are you preparing for the first part of 2021? And we'll continue for this first question, we'll continue in that same kind of order that we've been going. So starting first with you, Brian.
Yeah, look, I think at a high level, 2020 may have started very ambitious. Speaking personally for our company, we had big plans. We're in the middle of a lot of companies are going through this too, but digital transformation and that's very ambitious. And we had a lot of really, really big dollar tickets, big dollar projects tied to those things. And when we had to hit the brakes, so to speak, in March and kind of redirect, that was challenging to the mindset, because we were all in the big boat, we were rowing in the same direction, and then hit the skids, and we had to kind of reevaluate. Really, what did we want to do as a company? Obviously, the first priority was really taking care of our employees first, and the safety and health of everyone. So made sure that was, and that takes resources too. That takes, we stood up several projects, actually diverted many project managers and project managers' times and solution leads and all those things towards, creating a safe work environment and make sure that people can work from home. By the way, that's no easy task either. Mobilizing an entire IT department and a sales force and finance people and HR people, that takes time. So it took us several months to get to a point where we got to stable at a high level. Once we got to stable, we started looking at, we're in a business, and you guys heard I'm in the wine and spirits business, and typically, we can weather the storm. When we go through slight dips in the economy, or there's other forces at will. We were actually pessimistic in March and April, like this might be the one that we're not going to be able to do so well through. But we've done well as a company. We've saved dollars and nickels on expenses and things like that to be able to put us in a position once we got stable to start thinking about the end of the year. Around July, August, we started thinking, okay, we're stable now. People can work from home. They're successful and they're producing really good work. What can we do? So we started looking at, strategic things that we needed to do to help our customer base over the back half of the year. So we started kicking off projects, rediverting those folks who were working on the work from home strategies or whatnot back to things that would really help our customers. I honestly think we're going to be in that mode for a little while. No one can tell us what's behind door number 2, or when this pandemic might subside a bit, where we can get back to somewhat normal. Maybe this is the normal. Maybe we need to figure out how to live in this environment for an extended amount of time, and really that's where we're going to divert a lot of our thinking, a lot of our resources in the short-term future. We're also making long-term plans. There's no doubt, but it seems like we're finding out things on a daily basis that take a little bit more reaction than they did in the past. Yeah. I'll just pause too. I'm sure there's other panelists with other opinions as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, but I think it's a fantastic insight. And as you mentioned, right, that adaptation from early on, and I think a lot of people in a lot of different industries had that initial kind of fear of like, is this the one kind of big crises that is hard for us to come back from? I know from all the virtual happy hours that I'm attending that wine and spirits are certainly still in demand from people. But I love that point that you mentioned too, is that it took some resources to do the adaptation. In a way, adapting to the pandemic was a project in and of itself, which we kind of had to treat with the same kind of rigor and value of those resources. So I think, great point that you shared there. What about you, Natsia? What are you seeing on your side in terms of where you're at now, wrapping up 2020, and as you think about 2021?
So I actually find a lot of similarities with what Brian said. I think every single company went through the same shock. How do we restaff? How do we equip our teams? to work remotely. Like for the bank, it was more than a shock. Like you wouldn't even think a year ago that all the operations can manage the banking outside of the bank, actually, right? Being at home. But the problem was, as Brian mentioned, no one was prepared for that. You have to equip the people, you have to train people, because so many people never dealt with telecommunications, right? We lost the personal touch with our client. How do we maintain the contact? How do we deliver the service we used to? So that was a shock. That was a problem. That was like a lot of people. And actually the procurement, it was impossible to purchase this equipment. I'm sure like a lot of people who in IT, they know how hard it was. Like it took me a month even to get this portable monitor, right? So I can work from home with having 2 monitors. It was a mission, but we survived. So I think another aspect which is specific to the banking industry and financing industry is paycheck protection program, Main Street loans, all these programs, all these governmental programs, right, that were implemented. They were just pushed out there, and financial institutions just had to find a way to adapt quickly, to understand what this program means, to create infrastructure, to staff people to support this infrastructure, and to deliver the service to the clients, maintain the clients, and actually in our way, in our case, even gain new clients, right, who subscribe for these programs. So that was a challenge. I was a part of this, so I thought it was insane. I thought it was hectic. I thought I can handle this, but we did. We did. We have to shift our employees from one roles to different roles, just to be able to maintain the operations and to provide the service and to support these programs. Me being a project manager had to do some loan processing tasks. And it was just amazing how people stood up and volunteered to help the organization to just get through this particular situation. So I think it was amazing. It was a great experience. It was tough. It was hectic, but it was a great experience. I want to say that most of the projects which we were working on were placed on hold. We are also in the process of digital transformation. We are implementing Salesforce. We are in the process of acquiring a bank, which I run this project. So I had to put it on hold. I had to reschedule all the activities three times to reschedule the conversion. But anyways, it is what it is. You have to just adapt, and you have to find a way to, deal with the change, deal with the changing world. So, but as we kind of found the solutions, as we got through these main challenges, closer, I would say Q3 probably, like we started, we looked at the projects which were placed on hold, and which ones can be still, put on some kind of a timeline, right? What just not to forget it, not to push it to the next year. Some of this project actually were revived, and we're trying to do our best to deliver those. It's not like we're forgetting certain things, but yeah, a lot of things were placed on hold. And
yeah, no, well, yeah, no, I think that was great. A lot of what you shared. So just as a heads up, some people are having a little bit of difficulty hearing you. And some of those things. So I don't know if that's a setting on the speaker that you can hear. If you want to, maybe just speak a little bit louder, weirdly kind of yelling for the people in the office, but that might help a little bit. But I think there's, great kind of insight what you shared. One is that everyone was constantly learning, right? For you in the banking industry, learning about all the different loans and programs and all that kind of stuff for your clients. And then for many people on the call, like even today, we're learning a little bit new about Remo and learning about Zoom or WebEx. We've done a number of events in all manner of different platforms. So I've learned probably 8 or 9 different online platforms this year. So part of this is a constant learning thing. Some people aren't learning even just enough, because the others are like, I'm also going to learn how to bake bread during this thing, or I'm going to, learn Tai Chi or something like that. So a lot of learning is happening. And then also that reprioritization thing, right? Coming back to those projects you had before and looking at, okay, what are the things that we can actually take advantage of right now that we can still deliver in this year? I love that as an approach. What about you, Pablo, from your perspective, kind of wrapping up 2020 and as we head into 2021?
Yeah. So Andrew, we're in the vacation space, right? Hospitality. So we got hit pretty hard. So as soon as COVID hit, We had to furlough practically half the company, and it's trying to wait and see kind of game, very similar to some of the other organizations in Miami that's all travel and leisure. Luckily for us, we were able to pivot quickly and come back and bring back most of the force, which was great. So we're lucky to have that. We've seen incredibly the demand for vacations is just through the roof, right? So people are kind of tired of being at home. And so as they have these wonderful offers, they're really taking them. And so that's been great. And these are drive-to destinations, which makes it even a little bit easier for people to go out. For us, from similar to Brian, we had big plans on digital, right? So we have a digital transformation going on. But because of COVID, we still have high digital plans, but pivoted quickly to address from where we practice Scrum, Agile. So what now? How do we address the fact that we need to go contactless? Credit cards. We don't want to touch those credit cards. So we're developing a strategy so that we could do touchless credit cards. Driver's license. How do we have them hold on to their card so that they can swipe it? We can take the data and process it that way, right? All of our digital pitch, so pitch cards or lead capture, right? Take away all paper. We're all going digital. So it really opened up a lot of projects that we didn't have planned, but it's a pivot because of the COVID situation. And frankly, in my opinion, it's the way to go, right? You've got to go digital. So this kind of accelerated it, which for me, it's great because I love working on these types of projects and technologies.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think you raise a great point that a lot of the things that companies are doing now in terms of either a push for work from home, as Mary shares in the chat, their companies are more open-minded to it, or exactly what you're talking about of the push to contactless, et cetera. It's all just accelerated because of COVID. Some of these things were going to come anyway, but it's that acceleration, that this has caused. And I think, that pivot, and being able to adapt, that's what from the session that we talked about this morning, that's a yes-anding of the circumstances. It's saying this has already happened, so let's put this into play. So great insights there, Pablo. And finally,
can I add on that, Andrew, real quick? I mean, if y'all didn't believe in time travel before, you believe in time travel now, because we've done things in the last 8 months through our digital journey that probably honestly would have lasted a couple of years, but we put resources against that. And that to me is the time travel. We're that far advanced. The demand from our customers, to Pablo's point, was to go digital, that touchless experience, or make it easy for me. And we had to really accelerate our efforts. So we went through a bit of a time travel event over the last 8 months as well.
Yeah, which is interesting because I think for that first month or two, everything felt like it slowed down in some ways because you're barely leaving home and all that kind of stuff. And it one day bled into the next. And then very quickly, as we started to adjust, as project managers, we do, right? We adjust the scope and timeline and everything. We get into it. So I think a great addition there. And finally, let's go to Becca to ask that same question of where the focus has been kind of now for the remaining 2020 and where you head to 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, like many companies, when COVID, struck, we focused on the safety and the well-being of our colleagues. That was our number one priority, right? Making sure that we get them what they need to be safe. And, that will continue to carry over into 2021. Now, with respect to getting back to the business of business, I think like many of you mentioned, technology will play a key role, as well as project program and portfolio management, right? Another area that I think we need to be extremely cognizant of as we think about technology is around data analytics, right? Data analysis. We need to understand, right, consumer behaviors and consumer needs, right? What are the needs of our consumer before and post-COVID? What are consumer behaviors that was developed, right, or developed during this COVID period that's going to continue to carry on after COVID, as an example? So as we look at that holistically, we'll be able to better devise plans, and we pivot and iterate as we go, right? Because we, truly don't have that, crystal ball to say, hey, this is exactly what 2021 looks like. But how do we, have a strategic plan that's flexible enough and allows us to, because I think we all as a company, generally speaking, we do a very good job, right? And sometimes even personally reacting, right? And what we need to look at is how do we then, having this data, prevent some of these things from happening, right? And how do we get into the needs of, our consumer base? Because at the end of the day, that's our bread and butter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. And that focus of not just sitting back and reacting, but being, how do we start to use data to be more proactive in planning things as they come up? What a fantastic insight as a way to start to think about that future. And, this morning we talked about this idea of having a vision doesn't mean having a script. And exactly like you're sharing there of like having this idea, but being able to adapt in those moments. So I want to move to our next question, because part of the shift that we're seeing, and Nazi is kind of living it today in some ways, is there's a hybrid approach now where a lot of things were offline for a long time, or we're all in the office, and then during the pandemic everyone moved kind of working from home for the most part. And now in the future we're starting to see a little bit of a shift of some people are going into the office, some people are not. So I'm curious, from your perspectives, how do you see project management playing a role in designing the solutions for both an online and offline kind of office environment, or we'll say in-person or virtual kind of environment, while still producing profitably? So what is your thoughts on project management there? We'll go, for this order, we'll go alphabetically by last name. So I'm going to come to you first, Pablo. Put you on the spot as you're like thinking through the answers. But
I'd like to copy off of Brian. To hear his answer first. How do we work with or design kind of with in office and working from home, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
I guess for us, it's kind of tough, right? Because our front line, our sales, they have to be out in the field, period,
Mm-hmm.
right? So well, actually I have a good point here. So again, shifting, we sell a lot at, say, a Bass Pro store or other places where you see foot traffic, right? That's the traditional model. On the flip side, what we should be shifting to, and it's kind of one of those big projects that may come quicker, is selling online, right? And those are the things that we've had on the radar for quite some time, but it's a big lift, and how do we do that? And so there is a lot of focus now on shifting the sales model, right, to go a little bit more on the online and then online servicing. So that way, instead of having to do the call center, which our call center right now is also all remote, working from home, but being able to offer those platforms to be self-servicing so that they can do it from home themselves, don't have to pick up the phone anymore. So, for us, it's trying to balance, right? Because there's costs in all these projects, and where's the ROI? So is there enough of an ROI to invest in these projects before we commit? And we're still doing a lot of research on that, but that's probably a big shift for us soon.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point of needing to look at the analysis, and that's risk management, right? That's why, partially risk management is such a core cornerstone to PMI in some ways, and you get specific certification in it, is because you're going to give that balance of like, okay, what's the cost of us going all digital versus how long will ramifications of the pandemic last? And is it just kind of wait through it, or do we advance this, and how do we bring that hybrid approach in into together? So I love that as an approach. So up next alphabetically would be Brian.
Yeah, sure. So I agree with a lot that Pablo was talking about. I think we're at the stage where it's more art than painting by numbers at this point. We're really trying to balance production, quality of products or projects, really, and then not the least is the employee's life and their well-being, their happiness. You can't forget about mental health and physical health, and I think we're really in that art stage. I mean, do we want to get to plan stage, paint by numbers? Probably, but we're still feeling our way through it. We're using a variety of ways to understand production, actually, and this is actually one of the projects I alluded to in terms of capturing every hour spent by employees on projects or individual thinking time or collaboration time. We're trying to capture those statistically, so we really understand how efficient we are working at home. We all feel like we're really efficient. I mean, we all feel we get commute time back. We all feel that we only take a 15-minute lunch, right? And everyone's just 100% working all the time. We're trying to capture those statistically so we can really play that back to leadership, so leadership can really make great decisions around, what that future is. I mean, it's really challenged us we didn't have honestly a work from home policy before. So we have to think through those things. And is it work from anywhere? Is it work flexibly? Is it work from home? I don't know. We're still feeling our way through, but we are going to use a pretty pragmatic approach to try to collect that data so we can make some good decisions. And that's a project that requires project management type resources. And I would submit to you that might be new or a nuance of kind of a workforce study. So the short answer was, I think we're still in kind of that balancing period, and it's more art than it is, planned at this point.
Yeah, no, and I love that as a focus, and you're exactly right. Of like, I think some people, when this first thing started, they realized that they're not as good at working from home as they were homing from work. Right? Mm-hmm. Like almost that, it was like way easier to like check Facebook or scroll through Instagram in the office than it was to like actually be productive. Because are you at the kitchen table? Are you taking over the like kids' playroom, or like where are you going to actually work? How do you deal with these distractions? And the dog isn't used to you being home all the time, so constantly around or whatever, right? So that it is that balance in evolution. And something that was mentioned a couple of times in the chat from Amy and other people and Mary is that for the people who were previously working from home, there's almost more empathy and understanding now of like what that environment is like. And so when we come back into this more of a hybrid approach for some people, there might be more empathy and that understanding of that virtual environment. So Rebecca, same question to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I, too agree with Pablo and Brian. I also think that project management will definitely be playing a key role, more so even a bigger role than ever, right? I think project management work not only consists of, analytical and organizational skills in order to be effective, right? But more so, I think the project manager's job or duties, right, doesn't just end when it comes to saying, oh, I've completed my project scope or budget documentation, this marks the end of my project. Mm-hmm. But more so, at the core of it, it's also about understanding the people mm-hmm. and how to manage them in a way that's going to produce the best result, right? So, much of this, right, will tie back to soft skills, right? I think those would be equally important, in addition to, everything else, right, that the panelists have already mentioned. I think it's the art of possibility, art of balance, but definitely, I think that there's going to be a need. We'll have to anticipate what, the colleagues, the, environment is calling for, understand how we're going to motivate our team members, right, and identify ways to help remove some of these roadblocks. So it doesn't impact, right, some of the planning project work that, we've all been talking about here.
Yeah, certainly. And that's a great kind of going to be a great segue when we go to our next question, which touches on that kind of that value of quote unquote soft skills, which I just call them business skills, right? Because it's like sometimes people think of soft as like, it's less important, but in a very human world, like in terms of working, they become vital. And so that'll be our next question, but great setup for that, Rebecca. And we'll go to you, Natsia, on this question around balancing the in-person and at home part of the experience.
Can you hear me now? Just making sure. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I agree with Rebecca totally. And I actually wanted to talk pretty much about the same thing. I think that with remote, we lost this impersonal touch, and whatever you as a human being can address or achieve or, inspire other team members while being there in person, face to face, and spreading out this energy that you have, right? You lost it. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't exist anymore. So you have to be creative. You have to have your soft skills pretty much like 100% and even more in order to lead your teams who are somewhere there behind the screen, right? Mm-hmm. While you're talking in the meeting, doing something else, getting a coffee, dealing with their kids. It's so like important to to have these skills, to develop these skills, and find a way to get through this virtual, I guess, screen and distance that you have with these people. So that's the challenge. But I think this is the beauty, because every single initiative would demand a project manager, right? Because this is the person who can get through this wall, who can get people motivated, who can get people on the same page, who can basically still drag through whatever initiative they are working with. So I think soft skills, that's like on the top of the list of, I guess, why we need the project management and how it helps to deliver better results in these remote environments.
Yeah, which I think is so crucial, right? Like you said, how do you make those connections in a virtual thing when it's through a camera? And one of the things that I learned pretty early on, this was a great tip by a guy named Mark Bowen, who is like a body language expert. He talked to me about the importance of eye contact. And so he gave a little tip where if you just put a Post-it note next to your webcam with a little smiley face on it, or if you go to the store and get those little googly eyes, put those next to your webcam camera, and that's just a reminder to actually check in with the camera, because that's eye contact to your audience, as opposed to just like looking at yourself the whole time or looking at even the video of other people. So checking in with your camera, I think, is a great way to build at least a little bit of a feeling of connection. And it is interesting because, you know, I feel like people are almost increasingly, they feel a little bit more like Alexa and Siri, right? Like when you're working with your coworkers, because you just kind of speak something out loud to a computer and then you hopefully get a response back. And so it is challenging, but I think the goal is not to treat people more and more like Alexa and Siri or your Google Home, but treat maybe Alexa and Siri a little bit more like a human. In fact, I'm just curious, from the people kind of listening right now, go ahead and put a Y for yes in the chat if you have a smart device at home. Just put a Y for yes if you have a smart if you got a smart device. We're seeing a bunch of yeses, some saying no. Also, in the chat, go ahead and put a Y for yes if you say thank you or please to your smart device. I'm curious if the people say thank you or please. I think you should. I've started doing it. I think not only is it polite, it keeps you in good manners, but also if there is a robot uprising, you want Alexa to be like, you know what, they were one of the good ones, right? It's just a strategy for the future. But you know, as we started to talk about towards the end of that, was around kind of this idea of soft skills, and certainly as project managers, you know, some of the people that we're working with are in fact humans. Some of the things that we're working with, our resources, are humans, and there's some uncertainty that comes with that. And so the next question is, how do you recommend project managers to embrace the rapid shifts of everything happening and cope with the uncertainty of the economy? And feel free to share like a specific strategy of basically how you're handling the soft skills or even the mental health aspects, either for yourself in the current environment or encouraging it of your team, but managing that human component. And we'll go in reverse order of the initial introductions, because Becca, you had some great insights onto soft skills to begin with. So we're going to start with you.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you for that. You know, I think with COVID, change is amplified, right? You know, generally speaking, organizations go through lots of change. These changes can range from small adjustments to, you know, just little, internal processes, for example, to something really large, right? Like completing, you know, a new product development, for example, right? Or services, or going through a supply chain type of strategy changes, structuring the organization as a whole, right? With COVID, you know, when we look at operational expenses, operational changes, how do we, you know, ensure that we maximize the value of the people resource, of the technology, and so forth? So as I look at that holistically, I think project managers more than ever will need to develop a plan, a change management plan, for example. And part of that change management plan is that I think they have to understand, right, the technology that, you know, their organization or their team or their company is driving, that's impacting them, or how that's going to affect their project, for example. And then with that in mind, right, they start pivoting, understanding, you know, what are some ways that I can, as a project manager, motivate my team or influence my organization. So that way we develop a more of a robust change management process as part of our overarching project plan to outline the steps or the protocols that, members need to follow, because sometimes, clarity is more important in itself than the change.
Oh, I like that. Clarity, and it's more important than the change itself. Like that's a great line. That's one of those things you like type down and be like, okay, I'm going to remember that one. That's a tweet right there for people tweeting about the conference. Go and put that into a tweet, because that's some fantastic insight. And just as a quick note, because we're going to go to the rest of the panelists for this question. Also, there is the Q&A functionality. In the Q&A functionality, if you click on the tab, so if you're in chat, if you click on Q&A, there's also the upvote ability. So you can either ask a question or you can upvote the questions from the audience that you think are the most relevant or that you're most interested in hearing. Because we're going to go to an audience question next after this one. And so go ahead and upvote the questions that you like, and that will help us to dictate kind of which questions we come to next. But up to you, Pablo, next, in terms of what do you think in terms of what strategies do you have for kind of almost the mental health and coping with the uncertainty?
Yeah, no, that's actually a great question. And I'm going to actually go to something PMP basic, right? So resource management. So the big thing that we're focused right now is good, bad, or indifferent. We're all working from home. So guess what? We're not taking a lot of PTO. So that leads to the fatigue and the mental stress that we have. So we're trying to force people to take that vacation. But from a PMP or PMI planning perspective, you're going to have a lot of resources at the end of the year trying to take all this time off, which is really going to shift your projects and your financials and your schedules all out of whack. So we're really struggling right now to make sure that we're keeping on top of the PTO, making sure that they're taking some of that time off for the mental health, for taking those breaks, because truthfully, working from home, I wasn't a big fan of it myself, just because I like going to the office. I like it now. It's gonna be hard to get me back into the office, but I do work a lot harder from home than I do at the office, meaning the commute, right? So you get up, you get onto the computer, right? In lunch, I think Brian said 15 minutes. So you got to take some time off. So that's the big thing right now for us, is making sure that our resources are taking their PTO, making sure that they got that balance, because we do ask a lot of them.
Yeah, and if some people in the chat are saying that kind of same thing, I know a fantastic person you should speak to about planning good travel for taking that time off. His name is Pablo Civillero. So be sure to chat with him. But I think it's you're so right. I think for many people, it feels less like work-life balance these days and more like work-life survival, right? Because you don't have that commute that causes you to take a break. Yes, it's nice that you don't have to sit in traffic, but you no longer have that kind of end of the day thing where you're driving home and mentally getting out of work. Yeah, that decompression.
I just read an article on LinkedIn that people are taking fake trips to work just to get that decompression, go into the coffee store, something to just get out of the rut, the routine.
Yeah, Microsoft has introduced a virtual commute option as a way to leave. I did the same thing when the pandemic started. Is I start my morning when I try to start my mornings with a little bit of a walk and treat that as a commute, even as a walk around the neighborhood. And then it's same thing at the end of the day, because part of this is, it's not just how can you be productive for your employees, but how can you be more present for your family, right? How can you take those moments? And that's where, side plug, humor is a great value add in terms of getting people to relieve stress and making those connections. Great, excellent. We'll go to you next, Natsia.
I think the key is the communication. So especially for the people who live by themselves, I think they were hit mostly by, working remotely. And as all of us admitted, we are working longer hours. We don't have a differentiation between our workday and our personal day, right? It just becomes like one, set of hours, which you do continuously the same thing. So it's very important to keep this communication touch with the teams. Have these daily touchback calls, right? Or in the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, checkups, like how are you doing? Do you need anything? Do you have everything? So I think our management has done a great job with this. It was like a bank-wide initiative just to make sure that our managers and supervisors always are in touch with their stuff, right? And aware of what's happening. And personally for me, again, person who who is actually living by herself and working long, very, very long hours. What I did, I worked really hard, 5 days a week, but I tried to literally get myself out of the house at the weekend. I needed change of scene. I know we had social distancing and everything, but I needed like to, I guess, get with somebody, right, who I don't work.
Yeah.
And that's like an oasis, like creating my own oasis for a few hours or for a day. And that's what's kind of helped me to, to maintain this type of the work and life balance, imbalance, whatever you call it. But I think communication is the key. You have to be talking to people, even if it's remotely. You have to.
Yeah, I love that focus and that intentionality of saying, okay, one, I got to get out of the house, and two, I got to talk to someone not about project work and not about like housework. For some people who are like constantly like getting out and talking to your friends or other people, so valuable for our kind of mental health and well-being. I love it, and we'll go to you, Brian.
Yeah, kind of redirecting. I want to kind of go back to the soft skills comments, because this is really important to me. I've built my career on it, and it got me through high school. So soft skills and those meetings that happen after meetings, the meetings, at the water cooler, none of that exists anymore. And it's really hard to recreate that virtually. So what I would say in my advice to, project managers, a couple things. One, you're going to have to make those moments happen. You're going to have time to have the meetings with the stakeholders, but you're going to need to force those moments with some of the key stakeholders to continue to move your project forward successfully. Those natural moments when you leave the room after the project, you got 30 people in there, those are gone. And you need to be able to make those moments happen to keep your project going. You have a much shorter time to kind of influence some of those stakeholders. So we're counting on project managers to make those moments happen, because we can't provide them anymore, on a day-to-day basis. So it's really important. It's a new skill set, I think, to make, those things that were once casual, make them more formal, but still make them feel like a soft, casual conversation where you really get to the answers if you really need to drive decision making. So that'd be a bit of advice from me.
No, that's a great piece of advice. And Amy kind of shares, proactive effort engagement with our team's resources. Yeah, Google Chats are the new water cooler conversations. Group text messages are part of that.
Slack.
Yeah, Slack is big. Yeah, having even Slack channels. I know some groups create dedicated Slack channels just for a little bit of humor, for a gift thread. For giving reaction gifts and all of that kind of stuff. The new kind of like talking to someone after the meeting is like, can you stay on for a moment? It's like, hold on just a minute. Or it's the private messaging functionality within different tools to have those one-on-one kind of conversations. And I think that's a small thing that I've seen people do that I mean, even here in this type of environment, shout out to the people, typing things in the chat, because as panelists or as speakers, especially with other people's videos off, it's kind of hard to say, like, I think this is going well. I can at least see some faces, but seeing the chat and when people, even a simple thing like an LOL is helpful, because it's like, okay, there is some type of engagement. And I know it's really tough, especially in a Zoom thing, to be on video a lot. But that goes a long way for creating connection with people, because I don't know about you, but if I'm on a Zoom call and people have their video off, I either assume they're not really paying attention, or they're like hiding something like drastic, from the like behind them. So a simple, like, even if it's not the best view in the world, even if it's just a blank white wall like I've got now, showing your video, showing your face, at least for portions of the meeting, can go a long way in creating those human connections. So
that's a great point. Turn on the video. I fixed my hair today just for this video. So, you're done without it. So,
well, and it's looking good.
The video. Force the action.
It looks good.
It's okay. Thank you.
I like it. So we're going to go to one of the questions from the audience. This is from, I believe it's Masai. I might be mispronouncing that, so I apologize in advance. I have a dumb Ohio kind of pronunciation mouth where it's hard for me to get some names right. So I do apologize for that if that is incorrect. But the question is, kind of everyone is, from an organization perspective, do you see your organizations looking at, or do you already have some project management COEs, right? Communities of expertise, separate from like say straight PMO, like as a centralized resource for mature PM practices, skill building, community of interest engagement, that kind of stuff? Do you have kind of that dedicated program in your organization? And if so, has that been changed or adapted given the current environment? Anyone kind of have an initial, I'll make this a little bit of a poll. Anyone have like an initial thought that they want to share as a person to start?
Well, I think we're still using and enjoying our governance model. Before the pandemic happened, we got to a really tight space with our governance and our PMO, where we felt really good about our processes. Mm-hmm. We had to recede a little bit, right, as other companies did, and scale back and get stable. But we're going to still use the same processes that got us here to scale back up. Mm-hmm. We've got some more bandwidth in the back half of the year, and certainly looking at first quarter, second quarter of next year, there's going to be need to expand. And I think we're going to stick to our guns, our PMO model, and use those processes that we have in place.
Yeah, I like it. Any other thoughts on this question around kind of the communities and the resources?
I mean, we moved a little bit to a shared services model. So we have the PMs in a PMO type, and then we're trying to expand that outside of IT as well. So again, very traditional PMO. We're not that mature yet in being able to have a lot of shared resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, Brian, Andrew, if I may add,
Mm-hmm.
I think for American Express, we have a fairly mature model. We exercise a hybrid model, introduce that flexibility, right? Where, and then we also have forums for folks to ask questions. So they're not necessarily structured in a traditional COE manner, but they are pockets of specialists, if you will, that is threaded throughout the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, okay. I like that. And I think, whether it exists previously or not now, like creating that opportunities for those best learnings, like even if it's as simple as a Notion doc or Evernote or something like that, as you're learning, like that's what we've done on our team, is the small tips that we're learning in Zoom of like, oh, hey, wait, if you're going to create a breakout room, you can do these advanced settings and it makes that a lot better. Or, oh, did you know in the audio, you can change from low, medium to high suppression. And if we host some virtual shows sometimes, and it's like, oh, if you put suppression to low, music sounds a lot better if you're going to have a pianist or something come on. So those small things, it's capturing the insights just like you would for any type of project, right there. If you're doing some type of project analysis afterwards, this is just another project to capture that and leverage some of those skill sets or strategies that you already have. I like it. Quick kind of call back to, if you are going to show your video, Kim makes an excellent point that make sure that what you are showing on your video is completely appropriate. You don't want to be like the person who was recently fired for exposing themselves on Zoom. So be careful of what you are showing in that video. I like that. So another question, and there's a couple of questions kind of around the same thing, but I'd love everyone's perspective on this, or at least what you're seeing within your organization is, Tina asks, how can the skilled aged worker who is re-entering the space show the value that they offer? And other people are asking a similar question, like, okay, if we were let go, how do we, showcase the capability that we're looking for in a particularly tough time, because you don't even have the in-person interviews like you might used to, and you also don't have, some companies are a little bit more tighter in their budgets, et cetera, because of the uncertainty that's happening. Any thoughts or perspective that you'd have for those people in career transition?
I'll go. I mean, I think, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine, Brian. I was going to mention, in short, I think that 3 key skills to exhibit would be communication, leadership, and critical thinking skills, right? Because I think relationship and leadership skills really falls under the umbrella of communication. If you think about it, it's like, hand in glove, right? Type of relationship. You can't be effective if you don't know how to communicate, and you can't communicate with the audience. You're not reading the audience. You're not really understanding, what information they're looking for, or what information you're intending to deliver, right? Critical thinking skills, to sum it up, it's really asking the right questions, things that, will motivate. And, not only your project members, but really your stakeholders, right? What about your sponsors, if you think about that? Another area to think about is problem solving. We problem solve all the time, but when we problem solve, do we truly take an unbiased judgment?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll leave you guys with that.
Yeah, well, and that's a great articulation of right, communication, leadership, critical thinking. We talked this morning about the 5 core skills of work from kind of our perspective at Humor That Works, and you add in execution and connection, and that's those 5 core skills. So I love those as the 3 that you articulated, and I think you're exactly right. Seeing change, sometimes the critical thinking piece is about changing perspective, and I joke because I'm an engineer and I'm a nerd and I love numbers. Like, I don't think of them as math problems, but math opportunities, right? And that's what how we have to think about some of the challenges that we're facing today, is how do we have those opportunities? And from that perspective, when you can showcase that, when you can bring that in as a perspective, say, interview of like, here's how we're going to be proactive about this change. I think that sometimes helps people to see, oh, okay, here's what is possible, and that positivity. But other thoughts from the group in terms of re-entering or career transition, Pablo?
Yeah, so guy, it's a tough time right now. I mean, there is a lot of good skilled labor that has been let go and is available today. So the competition is pretty it's pretty through the roof as far as skill set. So it's tough time to be looking for work. So one thing that I can say there is it's definitely, you need to be more on a proactive approach rather than a passive approach, right? So submitting a resume and you see that 200 or 300 people have submitted a resume, the chances are next to none, right? It's about doing the right things. You going to these PMI meetings, networking, communicating, expanding that network, seeing who works there, trying to get an in, taking a proactive approach, because at the end of the day, if you're a skilled resource, you've got the skills. It's just about that chance, that opportunity to get through the door. And then once you do, then you can, certainly have years of wisdom and come back and say, here's all the fun stuff that I've done. The hardest part really is getting into the door. So take that really not aggressive, but an approach where it's balance between, being too pushy, but getting it out there.
Absolutely.
Don't be shy about it.
That's true. And as Pablo, that's a great reminder that, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics estimated, and this was even pre-pandemic, I imagine it's probably more so now, but they said that 70% of jobs are found through networking. It's not just applying online. It's because you talk with someone and you tap into what they call the